Are we going to see another Verstappen versus Hamilton? Or are we going to see a Kravitz versus Massey? Is Ferrari going to finally have some luck? And is the Australian Grand Prix still going? Let's find out. This is the F1 Debrief. Hello everyone and welcome back to another F1 Debrief for 2023. Of course, the Australian Grand Prix has been run and done and won by none other than Max Verstappen. This is his first time winning in Australia and Red Bull's first time winning in Australia since 2011, which is actually crazy to think about, to be honest, considering how dominant they've been in 2012, 2013 and recent years now. But it was an okay race. It started off, fairly okay. Then it sort of just, went on like an average race. We saw a few decent battles in the midfield. Max Verstappen started pulling away from Lewis Hamilton. But then the red flag happened. And then it happened again. And then it happened again. It was nuts. So basically what happened is early in the race, Alex Albon, he crashed, and it was originally a safety car, but due to the amount of gravel that was left onto the track, it required a red flag, which basically reset the entire field. Everyone was given basically a free pit stop, and in George Russell's case, that was quite unfortunate because when the safety car was out, because he was leading at the time, he actually went into the pits to change his tyres, which was in a way a good strategy call, but they didn't anticipate the red flag to appear, so he unfortunately lost out of that. But ultimately it didn't matter anyway because he had to retire due to a fire, believe in the combustion engine. Anyway, once the race got resumed, it was fairly straightforward. We saw a little battle with Hamilton and Verstappen as Hamilton was able to get into the lead. But then the DRS happened and basically Verstappen became a rocket at that point. Then the race became, like typical Formula 1. And then later on, Kevin Magnussen decided to show up and crash into the wall at turn 2, bringing out the second red flag with 3 laps to go. Now, I think that was, in my opinion, that was probably just a purposely done for entertainment purposes, as it looked like it was going to end under safety car. So that started all the craziness. Once the race got resumed, there was carnage. Basically, Fernando Alonso, who was third, was spun by Carlos Sainz. The two Alpines came together. Logan Sargent decided to send Nick de Vries to Narnia and back, and it was like an F1 lobby. It was just nuts. So to be fair, I'm not gonna lie, I sort of expected that to happen. That's what red flags tend to bring. But it was a crazy end to a crazy race. So let's have a quick run through the results and work from there. So obviously Max Verstappen dominated the race, followed by Lewis Hamilton, and then this is the official results after the third restart. Fernando Alonso rounds up the podium once again for the third time this season. Then his teammate finished in P4, so it's a brilliant day for Aston Martin. They're the true winners out of today. The second winners are actually McLaren as well. I know, I don't believe it either, but it is. It's true. It's true. McLaren actually had a decent race today. We'll get that in just a second. Fifth is Sergio Perez after starting last. I was expecting him to be in the top 3, or at least P2, similar to what Max did in Jeddah. But unfortunately that wasn't meant to be for him, and he finishes in the bottom 5. 6th is amazingly Lando Norris, and then 7th is Nico Hulkenberg. 8th, Oscar Piastri, who scores points for the first time in his home race, which is also the first time he's racing in Australia since his go-karting days, which is still crazy to believe. But that would have been a mega feeling, scoring your first ever points in your first ever home race in Formula 1. Zhou Guanyu finished 9th, scoring points for Alfa Romeo. And then Yuki Tsunoda, after, missing out on the points twice now, he's managed to finish 10th. So he's managed to get that 1 point he's been craving for so long. Now, originally, Carlos Sainz, who actually here finishes 12th, was actually meant to finish 4th, but he actually ended up getting a 15-second time penalty for spinning Fernando Alonso around in the second restart. But in a way, that's promoted Yuki Tsunoda into the 10. So I have mixed feelings about that. But ultimately, I'm not a huge fan. I don't agree with it, to be honest. He made the mistake, and in a normal racing situation, he would receive that penalty. But because it was like literally one lap left, and then the race ultimately ended basically under safety car conditions, which basically it ruined his race entirely. And the 5 seconds just didn't, it wasn't served properly, and he lost more than he was going to, let's say, in a normal racing situation. Now, in my opinion, I do think it's fair that he deserved a penalty. He did spin him. It was a tricky situation. I know that Pierre Gasly didn't get a penalty. I know Logan Sargent didn't get a penalty, but so it is a very inconsistent from the FIA on their end. But for this incident alone, I reckon personally I would just penalise him maybe with a grid penalty for Baku. I feel like it was just not really ideal timing in terms of doing it. Like, yes, he deserved the penalty, but he lost because it ended under technically safety car conditions. His race was completely shattered, which was a real shame. And in any way, the car above him, Valtteri Bottas, finished in 11th, just missing out the points. And then here, only 12 cars finished the race. So we're going to run through the DNFs, starting off with both of the Alpines, Pierre Gasly and Esteban Ocon, which is probably the top losers of the weekend. Pierre was running so damn well. I believe he was in 4th for a while there. And Alpine looked like they were going to score some really good points this weekend, only for it to be ruined with that second restart. Because what happened is Pierre Gasly he actually went wide into turn 1. I think he overshot it, I believe, from memory. And as he went to rejoin the track, now it could be because of the sunlight as well, similar to Kevin Magnussen when he crashed, bringing out this red flag. Because of the sunlight, he ran wide. But I personally don't. I think I don't think he saw Esteban, and of course it had to be his teammate. If you want to see the footage, you can on Formula One's channel on YouTube. But it's such an unfortunate and disappointing end to what could have been a great result for Alpine. 15th is Nick De Vries, after being sent to Narnia by Logan Sargent, who finished at 16th, because with that restart as well, Logan went into the back of Nick and basically trapped him into the gravel. Which is, and that's proper F1 lobby stuff. And that's also bizarre why Logan didn't get a penalty at all, but that's what I mean. It's a huge mess, especially when Carlos actually got the penalty, and the fact that he's the only one that got the penalty out of all of that carnage is a bit concerning. But in saying that, it's actually a blessing for Pierre Gasly, as he was 2 points away from getting getting a race ban. So I guess, count his lucky stars for that one. 17th was, of course, Kevin Magnussen. And then here are the non-finishers from prior to this red flag. We've got, obviously, George Russell, who, unfortunately, after running really well and getting leading the start, had an engine fire. Alex Albon, like I mentioned before, he found the wall at turn 6 after losing control of the rears. And then, very disappointingly, Charles Leclerc didn't even get to finish a lap. Ends the day on lap 1, which is I'm still heartbroken. I'm not going to recover. And I don't think anyone else is going to recover. Which is really disappointing for Ferrari. And I wish this was an April Fool's joke, but it's not. And I'm really concerned about the rest of the year, to be honest. They've had a shocking start to their season. And we all thought last year was bad, but at least they were able to finish and actually win a few races. So I really hope they bounce back. But, oh my God, it's more luck, if anything. Well, today especially, it's just luck. It was not their way, which was very disappointing. In saying that, let's have a look at the drivers' standings after the Australian Grand Prix. We're just going to run through the 10. So, of course, Max Verstappen continues to extend his lead with 69 points, followed by Sergio Perez with 54. Fernando Alonso settles in third position with 45 points. Lewis Hamilton fourth with 38 points. Carlos Sainz rounds up the 5 with 20 points, leading the way for Ferrari. And then Lance Stroll in 6th place with 20 points. George Russell in 7th with 18 points. And then, amazingly, Lando Norris, thanks to this Grand Prix and the carnage, is 8th with 8 points. Nico Hulkenberg comes home, is in 9th with 6 points, and Charles Leclerc rounds up the 10 with a whopping 6 points, which still hurts, and I really hope their luck turns around. Now let's have a quick look at the team standing. Red Bull lead the way with 123 points. Aston Martin are the second fastest car with 65 points. That is an incredible gap. It's like half. That's crazy. That's nuts. And the Mercedes is a little bit behind Aston Martin with 56 points. Of course, George never got to finish the race, whereas both Astons did. Fourth is Ferrari with 26 points, but catching them behind, which is bizarre still to say, is McLaren with 12 points. Now, of course, they were 10th heading into this round. They were last on the on the team standings, and they had a pretty decent race. But if it wasn't for the carnage, they'll probably end up being 6th or 7th. Actually probably 9th or 8th, because Lando was in 9th and 8th position majority of the race. The drivers drove really, really well considering how garbage the car is. It has no straight line speed whatsoever. So they got to drive the wheels off the thing, brake as late as possible just to do overtakes. I hope the car gets better as the year goes on. But the drivers do definitely deserve better. But I'm grateful that both of them were able to come home with points thanks to all that carnage. So that's one good thing to come from all of that. So McLaren will be pretty pleased with the weekend, but they do not... This isn't the drivers, this is the team. I don't feel like they deserve the 5th position at the moment. They have a lot of work to do. There's a lot of cars actually underneath them that are 10 times better at the moment, especially in 6th place, Alpine. They would have, of course, been higher than McLaren if it wasn't for the carnage that happened with both of them. They're 6th with 8 points. 7th is Haas with 7 points. Alfa Romeo in 8th with 6. AlphaTauri has only got the lonely 1 point from Yuki Tsunoda, and they sit in 9th. And Williams, unfortunately, are in 10th with also 1 point. But if it wasn't for the crash that happened with Albon, they could have, moved up the standings, probably a potential 7 or a 6th. It's disappointing. A lot of disappointment this weekend, but a lot of positives as well, as I said, with McLaren and Aston Martin. Well, that was the Australian Grand Prix. It's going to take about a month to debrief it, and luckily enough, that's how long we have to wait to the Azerbaijan Grand Prix in Baku. It was a crazy race. In my opinion, driver of the day will probably has to be Carlos Sainz. He drove really well to bring that Ferrari into 4th position, and if it wasn't for that penalty, he was an inch away from the podium. So he led the way for Ferrari. He did really well this weekend. Biggest losers of the weekend, obviously, I'm going to have to give it to Alpine. After having a very strong result taken away from them at the very end after they collided with each other, it was heartbreaking. Almost as heartbreaking as it is to be a Ferrari fan. But, that was nuts. Let me know what you think of this Grand Prix. In terms of out of 10, I'll probably give it a 8.3. That's very specific. But if it wasn't for that carnage, it would probably be down to a 7. Because there was some decent battles on track with the midfield. But there wasn't really typical Formula 1. There's not a huge amount of racing happening. But, if you did enjoy this, feel free to hit the follow button on Spotify, subscribe on YouTube. Do that, like, share, whatever you do if you like stuff. Stay tuned for my Supercars debrief as well in the coming days. Of course, they had their race at Melbourne as well, and that was just as much chaos as the Grand Prix. A little bit less controversial, but there is a lot to uncover, so stay tuned for that. And I'll chat to you guys in a month's time for the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. My top 5 predictions will probably be Verstappen, Perez. That'll be the 2. And then Alonso, I've got to give him 3rd place. I've got to go basic here. I reckon he's just going to finish 3rd once again. And then 4th will probably be, I hope, Charles Leclerc. I'm going to say that. They do have a decent car behind them. They just haven't had luck or reliability. And rounding up the 5 will probably be George Russell. Right. I'll catch you guys later. I do apologise. This is a bit of a improvised ending, but it is what it is. I'll get there. I'll catch you guys next time.